It was early spring in Vatican City when the dog first appeared. No one saw it arrive. One day, guards patrolling near the Apostolic Palace noticed a quiet figure sitting just outside the garden walls. A medium-sized, brown-furred dog with soulful eyes that seemed to watch the world differently. The dog didn't bark, whine, or approach anyone. It simply sat, calm and still, as if it belonged there. At first, the guards assumed it was a stray that had wandered in from the winding streets of Rome. But no matter how many times they gently chased it away, the dog always returned. Some guards whispered among themselves that the dog might be lost, but there was something strange about the way it waited, especially near the places where Pope Innocenzo XIII was often seen. Inside the palace, the Pope's personal secretary noticed the dog too. One afternoon, as the Pope took his usual slow walk through the gardens, the dog silently appeared at the edge of the path. The Pope stopped and looked down at the animal. His eyes softened, and a faint smile played on his lips. He knelt slightly and whispered, "You are the watcher, aren't you?" No one else heard the words, but from that day on, no one dared to move the dog. The Pope's presence seemed to give the animal permission to stay. The dog was given a name by the guards, Angelo, meaning angel. It fit perfectly. Angelo was quiet, gentle, and watched over the grounds without fail. He never sought attention, but seemed to know exactly where to be, especially whenever the Pope was nearby. Visitors to the Vatican sometimes caught glimpses of Angelo sitting peacefully beneath a tree or near the fountain, but no one knew who he belonged to or where he came from. Days passed, and Pope Innocenzo XIII's health began to decline rapidly. Those close to him prepared for the inevitable with heavy hearts. Angelo, too, seemed to sense the weight of the moment. He no longer wandered the grounds aimlessly. Instead, he remained near the Apostolic Palace, often sitting under the Pope's bedroom window. Rain or shine, Angelo was there, silent and unwavering. One evening, as twilight fell over the ancient city, the Pope's chief physician stood at the window, looking down at the dog. "It's as if he's waiting for something," the doctor said softly. The Pope's personal secretary replied, "Perhaps he's waiting for the Holy Father himself." That night, Pope Innocenzo XIII was restless. He murmured prayers and glanced toward the window where Angelo sat. Though the dog was outside, the Pope could feel his presence as a comforting shadow. The room was quiet, save for the faint sound of the city beyond. Suddenly, the Pope's breathing steadied. A serene calm settled over him, as if the watcher had brought a silent blessing. Meanwhile, Angelo remained on his vigil beneath the window until dawn. The first rays of sunlight glimmered over St. Peter's Basilica, touching the dog's fur like a halo. In the days that followed, Angelo became more than just a stray in the eyes of the Vatican staff. He was a symbol, a quiet guardian who arrived without fanfare and stayed without question. The Pope's condition worsened, and the Vatican prepared for the public farewell. Yet, amidst the growing crowds and hurried preparations, Angelo's presence became a constant thread, the silent witness to a moment in history that no one could yet understand. And in the shadows of the great basilica, with the world waiting and watching, Angelo's story was only beginning. As the days slipped quietly by, the weight of Pope Innocenzo XIII's declining health pressed heavily on the Vatican. The once vibrant and commanding leader now lay frail and weak, confined to a small hospital suite within the walls of the Apostolic Palace. The news spread slowly, yet surely, through the corridors of power and faith, filling hearts with sorrow and uncertainty. But through all the whispered prayers and hurried footsteps, Angelo remained a quiet, steady presence, wherever the Pope was. Taken whether to the chapel for a moment of prayer, or to the room where he rested, Angelo appeared as if drawn by an unseen thread. He never barked or demanded attention. Instead, he sat quietly nearby, eyes unwavering, almost as if guarding the fragile life before him. The staff who cared for the Pope were baffled. None had seen such loyalty in a stray, especially one with no known owner. They brought blankets to shelter him from cold nights and left bowls of food and water at the palace gates. But Angelo would eat little and drink less when watched. He seemed to sustain himself on something far beyond the earthly. On the night, the Pope gave his final public blessing, a moment etched forever in the minds of millions. Angelo sat in the shadow beneath St. Peter's Basilica. The square was bathed in soft candlelight, the air thick with prayers and quiet sobs. From a distance, Angelo's silhouette was barely visible, yet his presence was undeniable. A photographer working for a small Vatican news agency captured an extraordinary image. The Pope, frail but dignified, his hand raised in blessing from a balcony. And beneath, the watchful eyes of the dog, fixed upward toward the flickering light. The photo quickly spread beyond the Vatican walls. Across newspapers, television screens, and the growing world of social media, people paused to wonder at the mysterious figure silently guarding the Holy Father. Some called it a sign, a symbol of divine protection. Others dismissed it as coincidence. Yet no one could deny the stirring emotion it evoked. Inside the Vatican, those closest to the Pope spoke in hushed tones. "The dog," whispered one cardinal, "is more than he appears." But no one knew why Angelo remained so devoted, so still, as if tethered to the fate of the man he silently protected. The night after the blessing, the Pope's breathing grew shallow. The room fell quiet, except for the soft rustling of the sheets and the gentle murmur of prayers. Outside the window, Angelo lay curled on the cold stone, his gaze never leaving the dimly lit room above. Hours later, as dawn threatened the horizon, the Pope slipped into an unbroken sleep, one from which he would not awaken. The Vatican was enveloped in a solemn stillness. Guards paced nervously, priests prepared final rites, and Angelo kept his place beneath the window, as if standing guard over the threshold between life and death. No one dared disturb the dog's vigil. Word spread among the Vatican staff that Angelo had refused to leave his post for days. Some speculated he understood what was coming. Others believed he was more than just a stray. Yet the greatest question remained unanswered. Who was Angelo, really? Where did he come from? And why had he chosen to stay? As the world held its breath for news of the Pope's condition, one thing was clear: Angelo was no longer just a silent observer. He had become a symbol of hope, mourning, and perhaps something far greater. And the story of the Vatican's quiet guardian was only beginning to touch the hearts of millions. The early hours of that cool spring Thursday carried a weight the world would never forget. At exactly 3:44 a.m., Pope Innocenzo XIII took his final breath. Inside the quiet hospital suite of the Apostolic Palace, the flickering candlelight that had burned since evening seemed to dim, as if morning itself. The news spread quickly through the marble halls of the Vatican and beyond, carried by whispered prayers, hushed sobs, and the tolling of the great bells of St. Peter's Basilica that echoed across Rome. The city awoke to a world suddenly changed, a world mourning a leader whose compassion had touched millions. Yet, amid the gathering crowd and the surging emotions, one figure stood apart. Angelo, the brown-furred dog whose presence had puzzled the Vatican from the beginning, was already waiting, long before the bells had finished tolling. A janitor on his early rounds spotted Angelo sitting silently outside the heavy bronze doors of St. Peter's Basilica. The dog's gaze was fixed on the great altar inside, as if guarding the heart of the church itself. The guards were surprised. No one had seen him enter. The gates were locked, the square patrolled. Angelo had appeared quietly, as if summoned by some unseen force. No one dared to move him. Inside the basilica, Preparations were underway for the Pope's body to be placed on view. The massive wooden coffin, simple yet elegant, was carried through. Sacred halls lined with frescoes and centuries of history. The air was thick with incense, prayers, and the soft shuffle of feet. When the coffin was set before the altar, the crowd gasped to see Angelo step slowly down the center aisle. His steps were deliberate, measured, filled with a strange reverence. He stopped and curled up beside the coffin, resting his head gently near the carved wood. The congregation fell into a hush. Cameras from around the world focused on the silent dog who refused to leave. Children, moved by the sight, reached out with trembling hands to touch Angelo's fur. Older mourners wept openly, their tears a testament to the bond that had formed between man and beast during those final days. The Vatican's live broadcast captured every moment. The world watched in stunned silence as Angelo remained steadfast a guardian, a witness, a companion. Meanwhile, the question on everyone's mind was whispered but never answered. What was Angelo's story? Some suggested he was a specially trained Vatican dog, gifted to the Pope in his youth and long kept out of public view. Others thought he was a stray who had somehow understood the magnitude of the moment, drawn by love and loyalty, but no one truly knew. Inside the papal apartments, the Pope's closest aides shared stories of how Angelo had appeared only after. The Pope's health took a sudden turn, how he seemed to watch over the Holy Father with quiet devotion, never leaving his side. The Pope himself had often spoken to Angelo in his final weeks. "You are my silent strength," he had whispered. "In your eyes, I see peace." As mourners continued to file past the coffin in the Basilica, many felt an unspoken understanding that Angelo's presence was no accident. He was a symbol of something deeper, a living reminder that even in death, faith and loyalty endure. That night, as the Vatican prepared for the funeral, Angelo remained at the altar. When the crowds thinned, he stayed, his eyes closed, resting beside the man he had silently watched over. And as the moonlight spilled through the stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows across the marble floor, a quiet promise hung in. The air brought a promise of hope, love, and a story that was far from over. The morning light filtered softly through the vast windows of St. Peter's Basilica as the heavy wooden coffin of Pope Innocenzo XIII was carried solemnly down the central aisle. A hush fell over the crowd gathered inside, the faithful, the clergy, the diplomats from every corner of the globe, all united by grief and reverence. But amid the sea of black robes and bowed heads, one figure quietly captured the attention. Of all, Angelo, the mysterious brown dog, who had followed the Pope's final days with unwavering devotion. As the coffin was gently placed before the grand altar, Angelo stepped forward without hesitation. He walked with slow, purposeful steps down the aisle, his fur catching the soft morning light. The murmurs of surprise rippled through the basilica as the dog curled up right beside the coffin, settling as if guarding something sacred. The cardinals exchanged glances, uncertain whether to allow the dog to remain so close during such a solemn moment. But the Pope's personal secretary, a kind-faced man who had witnessed Angelo's silent loyalty, quietly nodded, signaling that the dog should be left undisturbed. And so, Angelo stayed. Hours passed as mourners filed through the basilica, paying their respects. The world watched live as the dog remained still beside the coffin, unmoving and calm, his eyes reflecting the flickering candles that surrounded them both. Many who witnessed the scene were struck by the deep sense of peace Angelo seemed to embody. In a place filled with centuries of history, sacred rituals, and the weight of sorrow, this simple act of presence spoke volumes. Tourists who had come seeking a glimpse of the Pope found themselves drawn to the quiet dog. Some whispered prayers as they knelt nearby. Others took secret photographs, careful not to disturb the solemn atmosphere. Children reached out gently, to stroke his soft fur. Sensing something special in the animal's calm demeanor, as night fell, the basilica emptied, but Angelo did not leave. Vatican staff laid blankets at his side and offered water, but he seemed content just to remain close to the coffin. Word of Angelo's vigil spread quickly outside the Vatican walls. Journalists described him as the faithful companion or the Pope's silent guardian. Social media exploded with pictures and stories, igniting worldwide fascination and debate. Was Angelo a stray? A Vatican pet? An angel in disguise? Inside the Vatican, no one offered an official explanation, but the Pope's closest aides whispered that Angelo's presence had brought a strange comfort to the Holy Father in his final hours, a reminder that even in solitude, one is never truly alone. During those days, a deeper connection seemed to grow between Angelo and the Vatican community. Guards who had once been wary now stopped to pat his head. Priests murmured blessings over him. Even the strict Swiss guard seemed to relax in his presence. Yet, despite the attention, Angelo remained distant and aloof, focused only on his silent watch. As the world prepared for the Pope's funeral, Angelo's vigil continued, an unspoken promise that he would not abandon his charge until the very end. In the hushed quiet of St. Peter's Basilica, the dog beside the coffin had become more than a curiosity. He was a symbol, a living testament to loyalty, faith, and the mysteries that sometimes dwell in the quietest moments. And the eyes of millions stayed fixed on that solemn scene, waiting to see what would happen next. News of Angelo, the dog who sat beside the Pope's coffin, spread like wildfire across the globe. Media outlets from New York to Tokyo ran stories, calling him everything from the Vatican's silent guardian to the Pope's angel. The image of the faithful dog nestled next to the coffin captured hearts, sparking curiosity, wonder, and an outpouring of emotion. Worldwide. Social media buzzed with hashtags. Hashtag Guardian Dog, hashtag Angelo the Watcher, and hashtag Faithful Companion. Videos circulated, showing the dog's quiet vigil, the gentle way he refused to leave the Pope's side. Millions were moved by this unexpected symbol of loyalty and love, sharing stories, prayers, and artwork inspired by the mysterious visitor. Pilgrims traveling to Rome didn't just come to mourn the Pope, they came hoping to catch a glimpse of Angelo. Street vendors sold small statues and paintings of the dog, and even local cafes decorated their windows with images of the silent watcher. Letters addressed simply to Angelo, Vatican City, arrived by the dozens at the Vatican post office, filled with messages of hope and gratitude. But for all the attention, Angelo remained elusive. Veterinarians and animal experts who visited the Vatican to examine him found nothing unusual. He was healthy but quiet, calm but alert. When offered food, Angelo accepted little, and never at public gatherings. Attempts to trace his origins yielded no results. No one claimed ownership, and no microchip or collar was found. Inside the Vatican, priests and cardinals spoke of Angelo in hushed tones, describing him as a creature touched by grace. Some claimed he was more than just a dog an angel sent to watch over the Pope in his final moments. "I have never seen such devotion," said one senior priest. "It is as if Angelo understands the sacredness of this time better than any of us." At the Vatican's daily prayers, some began to leave small offerings near the dog, a bowl of fresh water, a soft blanket, even flowers. Angelo accepted nothing, but sat patiently, his eyes often closing in quiet contemplation. Meanwhile, journalists dug deeper into the story, uncovering an intriguing detail. No one had seen Angelo before the Pope's illness worsened. Some Vatican insiders whispered that the dog had appeared only when the Pope's health declined, as if summoned by fate. The Vatican, traditionally cautious about public displays, made no official statement regarding Angelo, letting the mystery speak for itself. Outside the city walls, ordinary people found solace in the story. For many, Angelo became a symbol of hope in a turbulent world, a reminder that loyalty, love, and quiet strength could appear when least expected. Children drew pictures of the dog and shared them in schools. Religious leaders referenced Angelo in sermons about faith and perseverance. Across continents, people lit candles in his honor. Yet, despite the growing legend, Angelo remained unchanged. He did not seek the limelight or recognition. Instead, he continued his vigil, sitting close to the Pope's coffin, unmoving, as if bound by an unspoken promise. On the third day of the Pope's public viewing, crowds noticed something remarkable. Angelo had not left the side of the coffin once. No matter how many people passed by, how many cameras focused on him, the dog remained steadfast. His calm presence comforted mourners, who whispered prayers and shared stories of their own loss. Some claimed they saw tears in Angelo's eyes. Others believed he prayed silently, offering his own form of tribute. In a world filled with noise and chaos, the quiet loyalty of one dog was speaking volumes. And as millions watched and wondered, Angelo's story grew deeper, transforming from a curious incident into a global symbol of love, faith, and the mysteries that bind us all. The day of the final liturgy arrived, a moment the world awaited with heavy hearts and bowed heads. St. Peter's Basilica was filled beyond capacity, with dignitaries, clergy, pilgrims, and mourners gathered to say farewell to Pope Innocenzo XIII. The air was thick with incense, prayers, and the weight of profound loss. Angelo, the faithful dog who had captured the world's imagination, sat quietly beside the coffin, as he had for days. His eyes, deep and reflective, seemed to carry the sorrow of countless souls. No one dared to disturb him, even as the service began, led by the highest cardinals in the church. As the choir began to sing Ave Verum Corpus, the haunting hymn that echoed through the vast basilica, something extraordinary happened. Slowly, Angelo rose to his feet. With a solemn grace, he placed one paw gently on the wooden coffin. The sound of his paw touching the polished wood echoed softly, drawing the yowling attention of everyone present. Then he howled. It was not a bark or a simple cry. It was a long, mournful, piercing howl that reverberated through the marble walls, rising and falling like a lamentation that seemed to speak of grief, love, and loss in a language older than words. The basilica fell silent. The choir's song faltered and stopped. The murmurs of the crowd ceased. Even the flickering candles paused, as if the very air held its breath. The mournful howl hung in the sacred space, a raw and powerful expression of sorrow that shook the hearts of all who heard it. Some cried openly. A child sitting with his mother whimpered softly. World leaders who had come to pay their respects wiped tears from their eyes. Priests and cardinals bowed their heads, overcome by the unexpected emotion pouring forth from the dog's cry. Angelo's howl was a voice for the voiceless, a tribute beyond human speech, a call to the heavens, a farewell that transcended ceremony. As his howl faded, Angelo lowered his head, his eyes closing briefly, as if releasing the burden of grief. He sat back down, placing his paw once more on the coffin, a silent promise to stay until the end. For several long moments, the basilica remained in hushed reverence. No one dared break the sacred stillness. The moment had become more than ritual. It was a testament to the unspoken bond between man and creature, between faith and devotion. When the choir finally resumed, the hymn carried a deeper meaning, as if Angelo's voice had touched the soul of the church itself. Outside the basilica, crowds who had gathered to hear the service spoke in whispers, sharing the tale of the dog's haunting howl that silenced the world. Journalists scrambled to capture the moment for the cameras, but no video or photo could truly convey the profound impact of that cry. Only those present could understand its power. The Vatican remained quiet on the matter, allowing the moment to speak for itself. As the service concluded and the Pope's coffin was prepared for burial, Angelo stayed close, never once straying from his vigil. And when the coffin was finally lowered into the crypt beneath St. Peter's, Angelo followed, silently and respectfully, disappearing with the procession into the shadows below. That night, those who had witnessed Angelo's mournful howl spoke of a sacred connection, a moment where the boundaries between the earthly and divine had briefly vanished. And though the world would never forget the dog's silent watch, it was that howl, the howl that shook heaven, that became the heart of the legend. The funeral mass had ended, the prayers spoken, and the echoes of Ave Verum Corpus still lingered in the marble halls of St. Peter's Basilica. The grand procession slowly moved down to the Vatican crypt, carrying Pope Innocenzo XIII's coffin to its final resting place. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, reverence, and the quiet dignity befitting a man who had touched millions. And through it all, Angelo, the faithful dog, who had sat by the Pope's coffin for days, who had howled that unforgettable lament, followed the procession with unwavering loyalty. Yet, when the last prayers were said, and the coffin was gently lowered into the crypt, something astonishing happened. Angelo disappeared. One moment he was there, sitting beside the tomb. The next, he was gone without a trace. Vatican staff searched frantically. The Swiss guard combed the crypt corridors. Security cameras were reviewed again and again. No one saw him leave. No door was opened for him. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. Visitors and mourners asked about him, but officials said nothing. Whispers began to spread. Had Angelo been an angel after all? Was he a spiritual guardian who had come for the final farewell, then returned to the heavens? Some said he had melted into the crowd outside, slipping quietly away before anyone noticed. Others believed the dog had been summoned back to wherever he truly belonged, a silent messenger whose duty was complete. The Pope's personal secretary, the man who had first welcomed Angelo into the Vatican, told reporters softly, he was the Pope's final companion, his silent strength. And now he has returned to where he came from. The story only grew with time. Tourists still arrived daily, hoping for a glimpse of the mysterious dog who had touched history. Vendors sold small figurines and paintings of Angelo. People left flowers and notes near the crypt's entrance. Yet, no one ever saw Angelo again. The Vatican remained quietly protective of the legend, never confirming or denying the rumors. For many, the dog became a symbol of faith beyond explanation, a reminder that sometimes love and loyalty transcend life itself. Priests recounted stories of how Angelo had seemed to sense the Pope's final moments, how his presence had comforted not only the Holy Father, but everyone who mourned his passing. And among those stories, one truth stood clear. Angelo had been more than a dog. He had been a guardian, a silent witness to history, and a beacon of hope in the face of loss. As the sun set over St. Peter's Square, the statue of a small dog, sitting with attentive eyes and a gentle expression, quietly took its place near the garden path, a subtle tribute to the mystery that had touched the hearts of millions. Though Angelo was gone, his story lived on. In whispered prayers, in shared memories, and in the quiet moments of those who believed in miracles that come softly, without fanfare. For, in the heart of Vatican City, beneath the towering dome, and amidst centuries of faith, the legend of the Vatican dog remained a lasting testament to loyalty, love, and the mysteries of life and death. Weeks passed, and life in Vatican City slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The hustle of pilgrims, the rhythm of prayers, the solemn ceremonies all continued as they had for centuries. Yet, among the ancient stones and sacred halls, a quiet change had taken root. Near the entrance to St. Peter's Basilica, Nestled between towering columns and fragrant gardens, a small bronze statue appeared without fanfare or announcement. It was a simple sculpture, a dog sitting upright, head tilted gently toward the heavens, eyes full of quiet devotion and mystery. No plaque accompanied the statue. No name was engraved in the stone beneath it, only the form of a humble guardian. Watching silently, locals began to call it Il Custode the Guardian. Visitors to the Basilica noticed it instantly. Tourists paused to take photos. Children pointed with wide eyes. Clergy stopped in brief moments of reflection, sensing the statue's meaning without words. The statue became a symbol, not just of Angelo the dog, who had sat beside the popes Coffin, but of something deeper. Loyalty beyond words, faith beyond sight, and the unseen bonds that connect souls. In the weeks and months that followed, stories of Angelo's vigil took on a life of their own. Pilgrims shared the tale in small chapels across the world. Priests referenced the dog in sermons about love, sacrifice, and divine mystery. Artists painted and wrote, inspired by the quiet figure who had touched the heart of the Vatican and the world. Though Angelo had vanished, his presence remained, a living memory carved into bronze and etched into the hearts of millions. For many, the statue represented hope. In a world often marked by turmoil and uncertainty, Angelo's story was a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of loyalty speak the loudest. Children who heard the story dreamed of meeting such a guardian. Believers found comfort in the idea that angels come in many forms, some with fur, some with paws, and some who watch silently through our darkest hours. The Vatican itself kept the statue quietly protected, allowing visitors to discover it like a hidden secret, a treasure of faith nestled within the grandeur of the Basilica. As seasons changed and years passed, the legend of the Vatican dog grew. It was told alongside tales of saints and miracles, a modern parable that blended history with mystery. And though no one ever saw Angelo again, his story lived on in every whispered prayer, every tear shed in the Basilica, and every heart touched by the silent vigil of a dog who refused to leave. In the stillness beneath St. Peter's dome, the faithful would sometimes look toward the statue and feel a gentle presence, a reminder that love endures beyond life, that devotion needs no words, and that sometimes the most profound faith is found in the quiet watch of a loyal companion. And so, Angelo's legacy became eternal not just in bronze, but in the very soul of Vatican City, where history, faith, and mystery forever intertwine.